Our second son, Sam, we got pregnant and I automatically assumed it would be a second C-section, and was countered by my doctor, who very early on told me, why don't you consider a natural birth? And it hadn't really even entered my mind, to be honest. And at that point I started gathering information and doing research and talking to other moms that I know who had given birth. And as it turned out, everybody I talked to had had 2 C-sections. So I'd go into my next monthly appointment with Dr. and she would then say, oh, well, you know, it doesn't need to be, it's all those other variables that resulted in emergency C-section, and really that still could have been a natural birth, even your first one. So, you know, and you're just like a first-time mom the second time around if you do a natural birth. So one of the big changes was having a 2.5-year-old at the time and wanting a easier recovery. I wanted to be able to carry my 30-pound girl and be able to bathe her, and I didn't want to be off limits for a month. And the fear of major surgery. That's the first time I'd ever been operated on with a C-section, and I didn't want to be cut open again if I didn't have to be. So yeah, gradually I shifted, but there was a lot of fear. And I think that that's the biggest thing most women have around labor. It's the scariest thing you do in life, probably, for most women. So by the end, I was still extremely fearful of letting myself go into labor naturally, but I did, and got the right pain medication, and it was a great birth. I had an epidural and no tearing, no major factors. And yeah, I'm very thrilled that it went through. My doctor, my delivery doctor at the time, and the nurses were just so enthusiastic for me, and my partner in the room was taking photos, and he's very not intimidated by the whole process. So having that support and having him there, and we set up the mirror so I could watch everything. So I just think it couldn't have been better, and I think that I had a great experience. And not everybody necessarily will trying for a natural labor after a C-section. It could still, you know, involve all the other risk factors, but mine just was great. I did end up having a 2-day infection. I mean, there's always things that happen during labor and around labor, but it was very minor and was treated with antibiotics. But yeah, it was fabulous, the support and the pain relief that I think, you know, it really helped. I wasn't doing it all natural to that extent, but yeah, it was very empowering, the 2.5 hours of pushing. It was, you know, 20 hours of lead up of contractions. It was painful at home. By then I said, I need something. So yeah, it was a great birth experience. And I'm glad we got to experience one of each. I mean, my partner was very involved in both of them, and he got to meet the first baby with the C-section and go around the curtain and get the photos and hold her first. And this time I got to have my son on my belly right away. And I think that that was pretty huge, because that's how you envision labor. And it didn't happen the first time around, where you're recovering for 40 minutes before you even get to hold your child. So yeah, just I couldn't believe the enthusiasm for the nurses and doctors and the energy they had for me, you know, to go. And it was 2.5 hours of pushing, so it was very intensive, but perfect. And, you know, 2-3 days later, I felt completely like normal. And I know that it was nice that I had such a slow progression. I don't think many women can say that they feel almost back to normal 2 or 3 days later, but I did. And I think it was because of the slow progression in the medication, that there was no tearing or no other issues. So I was, yeah, very satisfied. I mean, the biggest gap was having other women to talk to who had had C-sections and then a natural birth. I found nobody in 9 months of looking, and I know a lot of moms, you know, my age, having babies, and they know people, and everybody had had 2 C-sections. You know, nobody had even really seemed to be open to a second one. So that's really what I kept asking my doctor for, and saying, well, do you know anybody? Do you know anybody who's had a second one, a natural labor second time around, that I could talk to? And meeting a coworker who really changed my mind. She had had 3 babies, and I had a conversation with her saying, you know, I'm concerned because I'm having another C-section, and I have a 3-year-old that I need to take care of right away. And she just said, why would you have another C-section? It was very frank, and I barely know her, and I just said, well, why wouldn't I? I just thought I had to. And she said, well, why do it again? And at that point I just said, yeah, I am being really silly in a way. There's no reason to do it again. So that really opened my eyes. And this is somebody I barely knew, but sometimes coming from somebody you don't know so well, and another mother who had 3 children, no C-sections, but that really opened my eyes. I had a lot of sounding boards, friends and partner and doctor and lots of people I talked to. My mom really wanted me to try natural too. The fact that, she didn't want her daughter to be operated on. How many moms want that? And to see that recovery that I had with the C-section the first time around, and she really said, oh no, you can do it naturally, and just a lot of people that just felt it would be no problem. So I think that helped, and lots of friends that I talked to throughout the process. But I was really back and forth for months and months and months. And I didn't have to worry as much as I did during the 9 months of pregnancy, because there was a lot of stress and anxiety. I mean, it's a scary time, but also that you have so much help and you have so much support, and you can get the pain relief when you need it. I mean, that's a huge obstacle, I think, not just for me, but for a lot of women is, will it be there? If I try natural and it's excruciating, can I get some relief? And maybe that's why a lot of women don't try natural, because they know with the C-section, they're gonna just get cut open again and be fully frozen, and instead of the unknown. So the unknown was really hard to confront, because I'd never had it natural the first time. It's just so easy to do it how you know it the second time. So I think that was the biggest obstacle, was all that fear in my head and the not knowing how is it going to end up, the outcome. But there's just a lot of unknown around childbirth, and that's just the way it is, and it's chaotic, and it can't be scheduled like a C-section. That's what I realized all throughout. You start to get sold around the convenience, and I think a lot of women get sold around that about C-sections, that they can know exactly when, they can line up support, but that's not really what it's all about. Our bodies are meant to have babies naturally, so. I was most afraid of being split in two, like every woman is. My daughter had an exceptionally large, prominent forehead, and still does, in the 90th percentile. And since I hadn't delivered her vaginally and had an OBGYN tell me when she first met my daughter, you're lucky she was delivered by C-section. That's what a doctor told me a day after giving birth. I had a lot of fear around that I would have another child with a large head, and that I would be excruciating, and then I wouldn't be able to do it. And I also went and saw a pediatrician when with my 3-year-old about her head, and she's perfectly fine and beautiful, but I went to see him, and he said again, oh, I bank on having another C-section, that the chances are your second one could have a large head too. So I heard from a few people that maybe you should consider a C-section. And he ended up being born in the 50th percentile with a dead average head, and totally doable. And yeah, I think that was a huge fear I had around natural labor. I think the biggest thing is to be really open about your birth experience. You can't control it. We all go in with notions of maybe it can be a beautiful labor in the bath, and maybe it can be, perfect and pain-free or drug-free, but you do what you can do in the end, and to just be open about your experience. And it could end up being a C-section like mine was in the first time, that I wasn't happy about, but it was an emergency C-section. Or it could end up being natural, but the second one does not need to be a C-section. And I think it's very empowering, like my doctor said, to try to have a natural one the second time if you've had a C-section. I think it feels great, and to confront that fear, which is very, very scary, because you have 9 months of thinking about it and wrestling with what it will be like. But the recovery was amazing, having a natural birth the second time, and not having that pain, not being, it's so hard to roll out of bed in the morning. It really hurt. It really hurt. And not being able to walk down the hallway when I'd never had surgery before, it was a lot to deal with a child as well. So on your second one, it even makes more sense to try for a natural labor, which is probably why I was convinced to do it in the end. I didn't want to be set back for a whole month and not be able to drive and lift my daughter. Everywhere I go to the park, they said, oh, you had another C-section. You had a natural birth? I didn't think that was possible. Everywhere I go, that's the conception out there still in the market. Like, it's huge.